Hey everyone, welcome to It's Not Monday, where every week we bring to you a different knot commonly employed within the fire or rescue arena. This week we're going to go ahead and cover the water knot, not only because it's a simple and basic knot and it's a good place to start the series, but it's also a knot that you will find on pretty much a daily basis on the fire ground and within other rescue scenarios. As you can see here, this is my rescue loop, as it's commonly called. It's a 22 foot diameter continuous loop made out of a 26-foot length of 1-inch tubular webbing, and I've adjoined both ends to create that continuous loop using a water knot. These rescue loops can be used for anything from impromptu harnesses to creating anchor points during high and low angle rescue scenarios. So let's go ahead and jump into it. Before we get to the knot, though, one piece of housekeeping is that we want to practice how we play. And with regard to knot tying, that means that we want to learn these knots and practice tying them wearing gloves, simply because in a real life situation we will likely have gloves on. Whether we have utility gloves on like I'm wearing now, or fire gloves, or rope rescue gloves, or extrication gloves, we often are wearing gloves anytime we're doing something, so we want to be able to tie these while wearing gloves. However, for the purposes of this video and future videos, I'm going to go ahead and take my gloves off, simply so that you can see how I am articulating my hands, how I'm manipulating the rope or the webbing. It'll just be a little bit easier for you to follow along and see what I'm doing. Now, the water knot is again one of the most basic and simple, in that it is a overhand knot that we are then going to follow back through and trace itself using either the opposing end of the same length of tubular webbing or the adjoining end of a separate piece of webbing. Now in this case, if you would imagine this to just be a very miniaturized version of a rescue loop, we're going to tie an overhand knot, and then we're going to trace that overhand knot through using the same piece of webbing. Now, you want to trace on the outside of the knot as opposed to the inside. Alright, so this is the outside, and then this is the inside. Now, technically, it'll work both ways, but it'll be a lot quicker and a lot easier if you trace the knot through the outside. So you just pull it through, and trace it through itself. Make sure that everything is laying flat on top of itself. There's no twists or kinks in the webbing, and then go ahead and load it or pull it tight to cinch down the knot. And there is your water knot. And now we have a continuous loop out of that single piece of webbing. Now the same principle applies when attaching two different lengths of tubular webbing. So if we have this length, we're going to tie a simple overhand knot, and then if we wanted to adjoin it to this piece, we're going to trace it through, again going on the outside, not the inside. Continue to trace it through. Make sure everything is seated properly. There's no kinks, there's no twists in the webbing. Everything's flat, sitting on top of itself. And then go ahead and load it and cinch it down. Now, one thing to mention is when you're tying a water knot, and whether you're adjoining two separate pieces of webbing or you're joining two ends of the same length of webbing, you want to make sure that you leave some sort of tail. 3 inches would be a minimum requirement. A lot of people will go 4, 5, 6 inches worth of a tail on each end. Now the tail itself doesn't do anything to increase or decrease the strength of the knot, but what it does do is it gives you a visual reference. And so if you tie, in this example, the water knot, and you have 4 inches worth of tail on this side. If I come back an hour later or a week later and I want to check this knot and I still have these 4 inches, then that means that there's no slippage. Right? If I've been putting this through a load off and on, and I come back and I still have these 4 inches, then I know very quickly that this red piece of webbing has not slipped back through at all. However, if I come back and I only see 2 inches of red, then I know that there's been some slippage and that the knot itself is not holding and it's failing. So it would lead me to untie it and then retie it and see why it was slipping. So it's just a real quick visual reference. It also gives you something to hold on to when you go to load it and cinch it down to tighten the knot. But that right there is your water knot. Feel free to leave a comment in the comment box below, or post a comment on Facebook on any other knots that you'd like us to cover in the future. We'll go ahead and post a new knot every week. If you have any questions on tubular webbing, go ahead and post those as well, and we'll answer those as they come in. There are a lot of old wives' tales with regard to tubular webbing, with regard to the marks on them or breaking strength and stuff like that. So go ahead and post any questions or comments, and we'll go ahead and address them as they come in. All right, guys, be safe.